Welcome to the deep dive. So, picture this. A playboy millionaire, a massive national debt, and one single signature in Tehran, a signature that would completely redraw the map of the 20th century.
Right.
So today we're asking a pretty huge question. Can one, just one, disastrously short-sighted business deal really determine the fate of an entire region for, what was it, 60 years?
60 years. And it's more than just a history lesson, you know. It really gets at this profound universal vulnerability we all have.
How so?
Well, you think you're investing, right?
Yeah.
You think you're making this brilliant, proactive choice. But are you? Or are you actually being, well, determined by a much larger power game you haven't even seen yet?
That is the absolute core of our deep dive today. We're going to unpack the story of the 1901 oil concession in Persia, what we now call Iran. And from it, we're going to try and extract these fundamental rules of power, of panic, and of decision-making that this one deal just laid bare.
And our source material for this is just incredible. It details the journey of how these oil rights were acquired by a man named William Knox Darcy.
This setup feels like a movie. It's almost cinematic.
It really is. It doesn't start in some stuffy boardroom. It starts in Paris, late 1900. You've got this character, General Antoine Khatabgi. Officially, he's in town for the Persian exhibition. But secretly, he's desperately trying to find European investors.
To do what exactly?
To rent out Persia's oil fields, which were, almost completely unexplored at the time.
And he finds Darcy, a man who was already, staggeringly rich from the Australian gold rush.
A genuine millionaire of his time.
Yeah.
He was known for his love of horse racing, for spending a lot of money, and he wanted to be more than just some gold baron.
He wanted to be the next Rockefeller.
He wanted to be the next Rockefeller of oil, exactly. He saw this whole thing as a path to personal glory.
And that contrast is so important. You have Darcy's ambition on one side.
But history shows us that individual ambition is often just a tiny boat being dragged along by this powerful current of geopolitics. So our goal here is to move beyond these colorful characters and find the four immutable rules, the layers of power that shape this event.
And critically, how they still govern our own choices today.
That's the mission.
Okay, let's get into the deal itself. Khatabgi brings the proposal to Darcy, and the whole negotiation moves from Paris to Tehran, which was, I imagine, a very different, very complex environment.
Oh, completely. It was all about the court. And what's amazing is how this world-altering contract was finalized through these incredibly, human gestures.
The process was slow, right?
Notoriously slow, protracted, constantly interrupted by the Shah's whims. And while Darcy's representative is in Tehran trying to negotiate the fate of three-quarters of a country, he's apparently spending his free time buying local rugs and fine embroidery.
That's incredible. And Khatabgi, the general, what was his role on the ground?
He was lobbying relentlessly. Our sources point to this one critical detail. He wasn't just talking finance. He was making sure the servant brought the Shah his morning coffee and his pipe at the exact right time every single morning.
So that's the real insight.
Isn't it? The real infrastructure of power wasn't a business plan. It was social ritual. If you could influence the daily, comfortable habits of the powerful, you could influence the final signature.
You're touching the habits, not just making a logical pitch.
Exactly.
So after this whole courtship, on May 28th, 1901, the Shah finally signs. And the terms were staggering. Darcy gets 60 years of exploitation rights across almost all of Persia.
And in return, the Shah gets some immediate cash, a few shares, and a 16% annual net profit share.
Okay, this is the point that sets up your rule number one, isn't it?
It is. The decision to mortgage 60 years of a nation's future was made under extreme, and I mean extreme, short-term financial pressure.
The treasury was empty.
Completely depleted. The Shah's administration was known for extravagance, for wastefulness. This wasn't a choice driven by foresight. It was a desperate move to stop the bleeding, to fix a screaming, unbearable present.
A decision made out of pure panic.
A nation pawning its future because it couldn't stand the present moment.
But the ink is barely dry on that signature, and Darcy realizes getting the deal. That was the easy part.
Absolutely. The real battle was just beginning. He sends his field engineer, a man named George Bernard Reynolds, to the site. And this wasn't just a technical project. It became a challenge of pure survival.
The challenges sound staggering. Just the logistics alone must have been a nightmare.
Oh, they were. The terrain was rugged, dangerous. Local tribes were often warlike. Equipment had to be shipped into the Persian Gulf, He would circle through Basra, then go up the Tigris River to Baghdad.
That's it.
And then it was hauled overland for months by thousands of people and mules.
And the physical environment itself.
Compounded everything. I mean, imagine being Reynolds. You're dealing with constant equipment failure and the heat. Sources say it hit 49 degrees Celsius.
That's 120 Fahrenheit?
The drilling mud was literally boiling. The drinking water was toxic, disease was everywhere, security threats were a daily thing. Reynolds had to be an engineer, a diplomat, and a survival expert all at once.
It sounds less like a business venture and more like just an endurance test.
It was. And when you have that many problems, the costs, they explode.
How badly?
Well, Darcy's initial plan was optimistic. He figured, 10,000 pounds to drill 2 wells. 4 years later, he had poured over 200,000 pounds into the ground.
200,000, and he had nothing to show for it.
Nothing.
Yeah.
It was, for the time, a total financial breakdown. Darcy, the Playboy millionaire, was exhausted. He actually wrote that every wallet has a bottom, and he was there.
So he tried to get more funding?
He did. He was refused loans by the Treasury. The banks started to tighten their grip. And a small, inconsistent discovery they made at a place called Chaya Cirque just wasn't enough. It brought him right to the brink of bankruptcy.
And this is the moment. This personal financial crisis is where profit and politics merge.
Irrevocably. It changes the entire game.
Okay, hold on. I want to pause there. Why would the British government care so much about one millionaire's failing drilling project?
That's the pivot. That is the essential pivot of the whole story. At this exact time, the first Sea Lord of the Admiralty, a guy named Jackie Fisher, was pushing a massive revolutionary change for the Royal Navy.
Which was?
Moving the entire fleet from domestic coal power to foreign oil power. Oil gave them speed and efficiency that coal just couldn't match.
A strategic advantage against the rising German fleet.
A critical strategic advantage. So suddenly, Darcy's potential oil find, whether he was broke or not, became a strategic imperative for the British Empire.
National security completely trumped his personal bank account.
Exactly. The Admiralty basically steps in as this kind of national security matchmaker. Burma Oil enters the picture and rescues the project. But they don't frame it as a commercial buyout. They frame it as forming a syndicate of patriots. The game was now officially bigger than Darcy.
And this is where it gets just truly dramatic, almost unbelievable. Burma Oil takes over, they keep drilling, but the costs are still piling up. They're getting close to their own limit.
They are. And so they send a letter from headquarters telling Reynolds to stop.
To stop drilling immediately and limit the depth of the well they were on. They were done.
They were ready to cut their losses, activate that sunk cost protection and just shut it all down.
But the letter...
Yeah.
It had to travel that same slow overland route.
It did. And before that letter could arrive, history just intervenes.
What happened?
In the early morning of May 26, 1908, the well at Masjid-i-Suleiman erupts. It just gushes oil high into the air.
No.
Yes. The breakthrough was achieved maybe hours, maybe days before the order to quit would have arrived.
That is just unbelievable timing.
And Reynolds' famous comment on it just summarizes everything. He sarcastically noted that instructions can be modified because oil has been found.
And in that moment, oil goes from a hopeful investment
to a geopolitical destiny, and it launches a power struggle that lasts for the next century.
The personal struggle is over. The systemic, decades-long power game has begun. So, okay, let's tie this incredible drama back to those universal principles you mentioned. This whole history is like a perfect, compressed model of power dynamics.
It is. And what's so fascinating is that none of the forces here, the Shah's panic, Darcy's illusion, the Admiralty's intervention, none of them are mysterious. They're predictable. And they operate in our lives, too.
Okay, so let's start with the Shah's mistake. Rule number 1.
The law of short-term hunger. It's simple. When a state, or, an individual is completely out of cash, when they're desperate, they sell off long-term assets cheaply for instant relief.
It's driven by panic, not just greed.
Exactly. Panic is the key word. You pawn the future because you can't bear the present. And the person who shows up in that moment doesn't have to be stronger than you. They just need good timing and an understanding of your desperation.
That's a painful lesson. Very relatable. Okay, now for Darcy. He thought he was in charge.
And that's rule 2, the law of the illusion of control. Darcy genuinely believed he was the main character. I invest, I hire, I drill. But in reality, he was being dragged into this deep multiplayer game. You had the Foreign Office, the Admiralty, the Russians, local tribes, banks, Burma Oil.
He thought he was steering the ship.
When he was really just rowing in a current that was set by a much larger system of interests, a system he couldn't control, or even fully see.
He's a rower who thinks he's the captain.
Okay. And then the financial disaster, the 10,000 turning into 200,000?
That is a perfect illustration of Rule 3, the law of sunk cost. The deeper Darcy and then Burma Oil sank money into the Persian desert, the harder it was to stop. They kept going, not necessarily out of renewed belief, but out of this primal fear of admitting that the initial investment, all the time, all the money, the prestige, was a catastrophic mistake.
But wait, there was also a strategic angle there, right? It wasn't just fear of being wrong.
That's a crucial point, yes.
The alternative, letting the whole thing collapse and maybe letting Russia or Germany step in, that was worse for the British Empire.
You're absolutely right. Some cost is often amplified by an external threat. It's not just your personal pride. It's the fear that if I stop, my rival will step into the vacuum.
That applies everywhere. Career paths, relationships. You stay not because you're happy, but because you fear what might take your place if you leave.
And finally, the fourth rule. This is the big one, about the resource itself.
The law that resource reveals the system. Oil, or any great resource national wealth, unique talent, special knowledge, it doesn't just create prosperity on its own. It acts as an amplifier. It shows the world the true institutional structure of whoever owns it.
So if your institutions are weak, what happens?
If the state's institutions are weak, the resource amplifies corruption, manipulation, bad contracts, internal conflict.
And if society is already fragmented?
It amplifies tribal and religious divisions. The resource becomes a curse. Oil is a test. Does a nation have the governing capacity not to be burned by its own wealth?
That gives us such a shortcut to understanding the entire history of resource politics. It's amazing. But for you, listening at home, facing your own daily decisions, what are the direct practical takeaways from all this?
We can pull out 5 clear lessons. 5 lessons that apply directly to your life, to your career.
Okay, lay them out for us. Connect the state to the self.
First one is simple. Never sign your future while you're panicking. If you're feeling insecure, financially or emotionally, any decision you make will sell the long term for a bit of temporary peace. You have to step back until you have clarity, not just relief from the pressure.
Okay. Number 2.
Look at the system, not just the character. Before you get into any high-stakes agreement, ask, what's the real structure of interest operating here? Who benefits if I rush this? Who benefits from my ignorance?
Right. And third, that critical warning about sunk costs.
Don't be choked by sunk costs. The hardest thing in any project, financial, emotional, whatever, it's not failing. It's daring to stop the project, to prevent a small failure from becoming a total catastrophe. You have to reserve the right to admit you were wrong.
Okay. Number 4, about the resource itself.
The real resource is self-management capability. The oil will run out, the gold price will drop. But your internal capacity to see clearly, to tell truth from noise, to budget, to persevere, that is the mind no one can ever steal from you.
And the final one, bringing the weak Persian state back to the individual.
Strength must come from internal institutions. For a person, your institutions are your principles, your discipline, your boundaries, your systems for handling stress. If your internal constitution is weak, you will inevitably be led by external forces, by fear, by greed, by someone else's ambition, just like a weak state being pulled onto a superpower's chessboard.
So this whole oil story, it's really a deep allegory for how any of us can be bought or led or just dragged along by forces we don't see if we're not awake.
And being awake isn't about knowing more facts. It's about seeing the powerful, invisible rules that are controlling your reactions. The most dangerous thing isn't that other people are strong. It's that we, like the Shah, sign away 60 years of our potential just to silence the panic of a single afternoon.
So if you are standing before any major life agreement today, a new job, a relationship, a big financial decision, we want you to ask yourself 3 final questions before you sign anything. 1, am I deciding this from a place of clarity or from a place of insecurity? 2, have I looked closely enough at the long-term 60-year consequences? And 3, who truly benefits if I rush this decision right now? That is all the time we have for this deep dive. We hope this knowledge helps you navigate your own chessboard a little more wisely. We'll see you next time.